lovers of ruins, urban explorers, eco-volunteers, rangers, or curious visitors. These abandoned and grandiose structures of contemporary society arouse fervor in people. Many now are seeking their protection. In the middle of the G.E.I.E forest, close to Namur, hides one of the strangest chateaux in Belgium. In the second half of the 19th century, the Count of Liedekerke-Beaufort decided to build Miranda, a romantic chateau with gigantic dimensions which he would make his summer residence. Miranda mixed styles wildly, and once completed in 1907, after 50 years of work, it resembled no other chateau except perhaps that of Sleeping Beauty. ARTE is an adept of urbexing, a word which means urban exploring. Sometimes at the limit of the law, urbexers get into abandoned places which are forgotten but powerful.
It's the 20th time I've come to the Chateau of Noisy. It's quite dark today. That's not so bad. It gives the place a special atmosphere, one I haven't felt. On each of my visits, I find something new, like, for example, those scowling faces you can see there below the arch. Here is the entrance hall, which is quite typical of the chateau, with its fine columns and the blue ceilings, which made its reputation. It's quite majestic. The monumental staircase, which has been attacked recently, unfortunately the banister was destroyed just a few days ago. It was really horrible to see the staircase, which was really severely damaged. I said to myself that to give it back a little dignity, I was going to lift up the stairs and put them back in place. I spent half a day doing that, but I was quite satisfied to have done it because seeing it in the state that it was in was just impossible.
Miranda is a labyrinth of over 100 rooms joined by countless galleries, staircases, and corridors.
What's interesting to see are the trees which have started to grow inside the chateau. Nature is slowly starting to take over.
The owners of Miranda are tired of the extraordinary and overlarge domain, too expensive to maintain.
Here we are in quite a special place. This is where there was the fire in 1991. Starting from there, the chateau started its long decline. Even though it had been abandoned for a long time, it was still in good condition until then. At this window, we can see the forest, which is outside the chateau on the domain. And when you turn your head here, you can also see the forest and the domain inside the chateau. This place is quite special to me because it was the first urbex site for me. It's this that gave me the passion for doing urbex. You feel really very small beside this chateau, a little cut off from the world, and those are things I like a lot. I think that the Chateau of Noisy was classed #1 a few years back as the most beautiful abandoned place in the world, because it's very characteristic, because of these turrets which give it the air of, I was going to say haunted chateau, but really it's a fairy tale chateau.
Miranda has become ghost-like, the setting for several films.
The urbexer philosophy is that if you feel an affinity with the building, if the soul of the building touches you, Then you systematically do things with respect, damage nothing. Just take a few photos. Unfortunately, besides the urbexes, the chateau has regularly been the victim of vandals who wish to smash what's left inside.
Open to the elements, Miranda has become a meeting place for people who get up to all sorts of things. For safety reasons, the site is closed and access is forbidden. After the war, the chateau became a children's holiday camp, which Danielle knew well.
Do you hear the birds?
Yes, yes, I can hear them quite clearly now.
You can feel it's spring.
Yes, I understand.
Wait, there's another sound.
What's that?
When I was a kid here, there were lots of squirrels.
Yes?
Really, you could see them jumping from tree to tree. It was wonderful. Our own red squirrels.
Finally, between the time you were a child here and the time you were a councillor here, how many years was that, do you think?
Wait.
More or less.
I came here as a child in 1963, 64, and I came back as a councillor in the 80s.
Ah, yes.
It's beautiful anyway, even like this.
Time has passed, but it always leaves the same impression.
Time goes by, but memories remain. And the emotion is part of the memory. It's a part of me.
Yes, it's a part of the tear rolling down your left cheek.
Yes, it's crazy, isn't it? I was a kid. And look at the state of the castle. It was wonderful. We'd arrive here. You see, it was really nicely cared for. There was a lawn here. And you can't see it in this picture, but there was a magnificent wooden door that's no longer here.
When the children left, a wide variety of animals took over the domain.
Danielle, we're going inside now. Helmet.
Yes, in case things come falling down on our heads. Look.
Yes, I can see the door.
Wow.
There, I suppose you can feel something.
Wow, look at this. It's so damaged. Everything's broken. René, this was one of the classrooms. Unreal. Well, you see all of this. What a shame.
I've seen chateaux in this state that have been restored. They've been restored.
This used to be our office.
This battle for the Chateau of Noisy, I've been fighting it for 4 years. It's a superb chateau. It's heritage. It has to be protected, defended and saved. It's a neo-Gothic chateau, pretty much unique in Wallonie. Today, the fight's taken a new direction because the owner has signed a demolition contract with a firm.
There are around 70 people in front of the gates to protest against the demolition and say no one last time.
3 days later, they began. They took down the turrets, and once the turrets were gone, it meant that water could get in. It meant that the stone would literally shatter because of the ice, obviously. Since the turrets were there, you can see how, unfortunately, humans have come, you might say, to attack the chateau. The organization is aiming to preserve the exterior, the facades of the chateau, and to transform it into a romantic ruin. That is, ruins that you'd come and visit. When you have a chateau like Noisy, it's something I'd wish for everybody. In front of another abandoned chateau. So, as to protect the place, I put chains as well as a barricade. I'd like to buy the place one day so I can protect it more effectively.
Octa doesn't want to say where the place of his dreams, which he wants to protect, might be.
And this is the reason why I closed the place up. Urbexers can be seen as whistleblowers because they generally uncover abandoned buildings, but most of the time these buildings have a story.
Some buildings have burned along with their pianos, and this metamorphosis has turned them into real works of art.
The urbexers allow the building to live, shall we say, a minimum through photos, but they can't go any further. The authorities need afterwards to realize how beautiful the sites are and to save them after that. Here we're in an urbex place where the owners have found a good compromise. Because during the week, the place is open for photos, and in the weekend, it's simply closed.
Apart from the local wildlife which has returned in force, some of the exotic birds which lived in the aviary, such as these golden peacocks, have nested and colonized the chateau as well. In the United States, in New Orleans, when the attraction park Six Flags opened in 2000, it had an immediate success. The public was impatient after watching, day after day, gigantic roller coasters in steel and wood rise up, as well as super rides which drew attention and promised to thrill. The good times lasted 5 years.
When Six Flags was really rolling, we had 100,000 visitors plus. Sometimes this parking lot would be filled with cars. 12 years ago, we had a hurricane which flooded this area. It was a tremendous storm. Hurricane Katrina had more of an impact with flooding probably than the damage. A few years ago, this area would be packed with people and families trying to get into the park so that they could have a good time. A lot of noise of children, which was great noise. Some of these buildings were so nice. It's very sad because at one time this was a plaza that was filled with people selling gifts here, selling ice cream here. Hopefully one day it'll come back.
The 57 hectares of the park are in a flood zone, and this has stopped reconstruction work.
Unfortunately, obviously it's overgrown 12 years later, and it's got vegetation instead of a beach. That vegetation holds wildlife, rabbits, boars, and alligators. It's a dangerous place to stay, and that's why access is prohibited to the general public.
An immense flooded ruin inspires all adventure lovers. the park quickly became an attraction for urbexers from Louisiana and elsewhere. For safety reasons, the town council ended the contract with the operator and took back control of the site. Security guards now patrol night and day. The Megazeph resisted Katrina, and at the sight of its imposing carcass, a lot of the region's inhabitants can still hear in their ears the cries of joy when the wagons rushed down the slopes. The shouts of the crowd have died, and the music has gone too. Rattlesnakes are now the lords of this ghost town.
Well, Six Flags has become a reserve for a lot of animals just because no one's in here anymore. There's no people, the grass has grown, the trees have grown, the streets have all flooded, so the animals came to it because it was safe.
Opossums are the rulers of the fairground rides.
People don't understand how dangerous this park is. Again, the animals are running free. Some people have been bitten by an alligator or bitten by a raccoon or even a snake.
This crazy jungle of wood, rusty metal and concrete is an exceptional place for wildlife, which is pushed out elsewhere. The abandoned park offers them shelters against everything and abundant food.
So wildlife is everywhere around the park. It's kind of overgrown. Everything, vines are growing, trees are growing over us. There's snakes a lot of different places, especially in these sunny areas. When you see sun, we normally find snakes getting their heat. All right, there you go. There's a piece of snakeskin. There's your proof that snakes are here.
These dangerous intruders now feel at home, but after all, they lived here well before the park was built.
Here's a rattlesnake right here. This one's about 5 feet long.
The snakes that are captured are given to vivariums. Jeff meets all kinds of snake here. Real ones.
Big snake.
And fake ones. In a warm and humid tropical climate, the dodgem cars become, after a time, flower beds.
Check out all these cars. Lots of spider webs. The most dangerous animal in here is a rattlesnake. We have a lot of rattlesnakes in this whole area. A lot of people don't believe that we do it, but we have a lot of rattlesnakes. This is a rattlesnake tail. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rattles on here. And this is what protects it. And if after you hear this, then you get bit. That's not the good part. So if you ever hear this noise, stop and walk away.
The flood zones have become swamps again. Beneath a cover of water hyacinths, large-sized saurians are active.
I'm getting ready to catch this. If the alligator gets close, I'm getting ready to catch him. What I use is a real heavy string that you use to catch tuna fish. And when the alligator gets close, I'm gonna throw it over his back, catch him under his arm, and I'm gonna reel him up close to me. Then I'm gonna take this noose, put it around his neck, and pull him into me. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, at least see 5 alligators. I'm gonna try to get this one out of here right now. And cut the line. Oh, shit, too far. Broke the line again. Well, what happened is he broke my line one more time, so I'll probably have to come back at another time and try to get him. But we're gonna get him. We can come tomorrow and get the big one.
According to the traces that Jeff finds daily, several other species now inhabit the undergrowth. To identify and count them, Jeff places infrared cameras which trip automatically, even at night, when an animal comes near.
"12 years ago, right before Katrina, all the pumps worked. All had electricity here. Nothing ever flooded, but now it floods every day. Every time we get a hard rain, there's a lot of water and no pumps to pump it out. Now all it does is flood. Sometimes it gets really deep in here. Maybe we'll get a little bit luckier today. We'll get some marshmallows. I've caught hundreds of alligators in my lifetime, and when I have to go grab him by the mouth, that is the most dangerous moment. You know, just pull it end back. Just pull it back, it pops right. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take him to another part of the park. He's not hurting anything. There's no need to kill him or anything like that. So we're just gonna move him from this part where he's a problem to over here. I think that'll hold him for now.
Some days, Jeff and his assistant move several dozen alligators to reduce their number in populated areas.
All right, I guess our work is done. We'll take them and let them go somewhere else.
Thanks to Jeff's work, no urbexer has yet been injured, despite the attraction of the place.
One of the things we have in this park are a lot of honeybees. They're all over this park, but here's a good example of the honeybees right now. The nest is pretty much on the outside. The honeycomb is on the outside, so all the honey's here. But they're also entering in different places along the top of the building. They're a big problem here within the park. This is one of maybe 5 or 6 nests that I know of. We have a lot of animal tracks through here. It kind of looks like wild boar. There's several footprints through here. The trail goes this way, and it goes this way. We have some tracks. 2 here, 2 here, some right here, and right there. I normally put one camera looking at my pile of bait right here. We're gonna need to pull the card to check what's in it. There's a pig in that picture.
Hordes of wild boar, deer and stags, raccoons, opossums, small mammals of all kinds. The park has been re-inhabited at staggering speed, and Jeff follows the development of these populations so as to control them.
This is on night vision. These pigs are about 2 or 3 months old. They're very small. The mothers are very dangerous around the babies. So I like to try to identify how many true pigs we have in the area. And then what we do is take out the leaders. The females or the boars are the leaders in the pack. We want to take them out. My best year in the park was 36 wild boars for those 9 months, but I was working with a limited budget and limited traps, so. I like the nature part of this place. I like seeing the wildlife. Even though I remove the wildlife, I don't do it because I enjoy doing it. I do it because there's a need for me to do it. Some of these animals just get out of control. They walk across the highways, they get hit by cars. That's the need for my services.
In the month of June, torrential rains fall on the Mississippi Delta. In the time of its splendor, electric pumps kept the park dry. Now the water isn't pumped out, the site is becoming again the swamp upon which it was built.
The park's condition certainly shows the power of nature, but of course it rains a lot in New Orleans. This park was designed in a way that captured some of that water, and it was beautiful. It just needs to be brought back to that condition, and I think that it will be over time.
Lots of projects have been discussed to reuse the gigantic terrain at the gates of town. Eugene Green dreams of a prestigious future.
I don't know if I think that it's going to be a decision that Six Flags becomes part of a UNESCO project, but it's possible that because we are so close to nature and some people like to visit, that it could be something that becomes more official.
The Japanese island of Hashima is to be found 20 kilometers off the coast of Nagasaki. Coal was mined here for 90 years. Then the mines closed and everyone left. The ruins of Hashima might have vanished unless one man, Dotoku Sakamoto, had not saved them.
15 years ago, I started to try to get the island recognized as a World Heritage Site, and it worked. Few believed in me, and it took up a lot of my life. It was my struggle.
Dotoku Sakamoto moved heaven and earth, and in 2014 the island was classed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO.
This place is a treasure for me. Welcome to the island. This was the school and the place where we played. Now, it's just an empty piece of land where nature has taken over. The hero right now isn't the past, it's nature which is gently taking back control. This place is a kind of fusion between a sad and destroyed past and the renewal enacted by nature.
Hashima was only a rocky and abrupt island when a large discovery of coal was made. It reached a peak of urbanization in the 1960s. Constructions were raised wherever possible.
This here was my room. It was small but warm. My father worked in this sector. That's why we lived here. In the 1960s, it reached its maximum. Around 5,200 people lived here. That's 9 times more than present-day density in Tokyo, and it was the biggest concentration of people in the world. This was the hospital and the operating theatre. There is the light, which was used during operations on the ground. There are also sandals, which belong to the patients. You can imagine them fighting for their lives here.
In the 1960s, the inhabitants could find almost everything they needed here. Shops, bars, public baths, a cinema, a gymnasium, even a brothel hidden amongst the maze of buildings.
This was the busiest place. There was a street full of people selling things, and even a shopping center. There were so many people that children got lost. This staircase, we called the Stairway of Hell.
To cope with the rugged landscape of the island, there were many narrow stairways. Dotoku Sakamoto was strong and took the tricky ways with all the speed of his youth.
You can see that people left this place in a hurry. Through the verandas, you can still see the televisions. In 1964, the Tokyo Olympic Games took place, and this was the place in Japan which had the most televisions. 10 years later, everyone had to leave the island. If we should turn on this television, which has been off for 44 years, perhaps we'd see pictures from the 1970s.
In 1974, Hashima met the fate of many mines. Coal prices collapsed, operations ceased, and personnel and families had 3 months to leave the island.
This place was where people came from. All at once, they were told to throw away their origins and leave, with no choice except to go. It's still painful today.
The island was known as Okunoshima, which means in Japanese, the warship island. And seen from the sea, Hashima truly does have the silhouette of an imposing warship beaten by the waves. The island is open to visitors and Otuku as a guide.
You can see in the photo people saying goodbye and crying. A lot of people laughed at me and didn't believe in me. What I wanted was simply to protect my origins. To be a UNESCO site wasn't my goal, but the means to preserve my origins.
Today it's just a location, but I'd like to see what it was like when there was life here. This is where films like Skyfall and Inception by Christopher Nolan, for example, were shot. It's past heritage, but it's also a futuristic and apocalyptic vision of our world that could look like the future.
I see it's really a tourist centre with a lot of Japanese, a lot of people who have come to discover this site in a highly restricted zone. I really hope I can get permission to come and film with my drone. On this island, coal was found. It was exploited, and when that was finished, the island was abandoned. After that, it was made into a tourist attraction. But it mustn't become something temporary again with mass tourism. Unfortunately, for safety reasons, the inside of buildings is off limits, as well as some of the island's streets. And I've been lucky enough to get permission to come, and with the drone, a new tool for us, to explore the place.
In 2013, Google teams digitalized these ruins which recount a whole epoch. So well that now a virtual visit can be made of the parts of the site which are too dangerous for tourists to venture into. Salt sea spray and a violent ocean threaten to send the warship island to the bottom of the sea.
Here we've installed a device which measures the waves. Because we're in a place where first you hear a big noise and then enormous waves arrive. So that's why it's been installed, as these waves have a big effect on the degradation of the buildings. People can go, but the vegetation will stay. It will always be there.
Hashima seems unsinkable, but as the Japanese have learned painfully from their history, the earth is capricious. An earthquake could reduce the buildings to rubble. A few hundreds of meters from Hashima, in another part of the mining basin, rises the Shima Tower.
There were many towers such as this in Japan, but this is the last. It was something precious, so we decided to keep it.
It was in this 47-meter-high tower that was found the machinery which worked the lifts that took the miners to the bottom and back again, with blackened faces.
There are nests, so there are birds still living here. There are especially pigeons by the hundred. And the ground is covered with droppings.
Mangas have called the tower Zombie Tower.
People seeing this tower think it's haunted. When you see it from afar, you don't know what it is. When we came in to clean it, we took out 10 lorry loads of bird droppings.
The Shima Tower bears witness to industrial architecture which has become a rarity. Because of that, it deserves to be saved. The case is being studied at UNESCO. The island of Okunoshima in the inland sea of Japan, close to Hiroshima, is now the kingdom of rabbits. Japanese tourists are crazy about them, and over the years, more and more people have come to visit. For a long time, the island was inaccessible for civilians.
This island was used to make poison gas during the Second World War. The large building has been magnificently invaded by nature and offers lots of spots for tourists between nature and ruins. There are hundreds of rabbits which attract tourists to the island.
Professor Yamauchi never forgets to bring them some scraps. Children see the rabbits as living soft toys. Fed as much as they can eat, cuddled and hugged, the rabbits of Okunoshima have come a long way. During the Second World War, the island sheltered a secret installation making mustard gas.
When the poison gas was made here, more than 200 rabbits were used to test the efficiency of the gas.
At the time, the island didn't appear on maps of Japan, and the installations were classified.
In this place, some hundreds of tons of poison gas were stocked.
The production and stockage sites were scattered over the island and carefully camouflaged.
In the big building, that's where mustard gas was made. The heavy cylinders rested on these bases. We have to talk about this episode of history so we don't repeat the errors of the past. So these ruins must be preserved so that people can see them, because they represent the clearest evidence of all. After the atomic bomb at Hiroshima, all that was left was the vestiges of this dome. The bomb is part of Japan's history, and so is the use by the Japanese of poison gas against the Chinese and Koreans.
The rabbits perpetuate the memory of one of the darkest periods of Japanese history. The island attracts over 100,000 visitors a year. Children don't get tired of petting the rabbit's soft fur, and once they're satisfied, they visit the ruins and learn something about history which perhaps they didn't know.
Obviously, the rabbits help to make the ruins known by playing a role of beaters. At the moment, there are about 700 rabbits on the island of Okunoshima, and I think that's far too many. When I come on the island, I get the impression that the rabbits are asking me to feed and water them, and being able to feel useful gives me a certain satisfaction.
Near Lyon, the Demeure de Chaos exhibits the vision of the artist Thierry, who stages the apocalypse which hovers over our heads.
This immense bourgeois domain, which dates from the 17th century, I've transformed progressively in 18 years into a kind of artwork made simply from ruins, rust and ashes, and that's what creates its artistic beauty. This domain I've transformed in a post-apocalyptic way into a gigantic art museum. The impulse for this was the 11th of September 2001. If you had to give a meaning to 9/11, it's the ruins of the Western world. This sculpture needed several thousand tons of cubic meters of concrete, hundreds of tons of steel, and took 9 months to build. In this sculpture is computer technology, metal, concrete, practically everything our parents and grandparents built in the 20th century.
Thierry is building day after day a mausoleum dedicated to ruin and disaster. We can read therein of wars, attacks, and the dramas which have ravaged our world, and of which the story is not yet finished.
We're going to use a highly concentrated industrial chloride acid solution to reactivate the rust. Every society has built upon ruins. The end of a society is marked by ruins and the appearance of a new world. New technology, new philosophies, a new gaze upon the world can only be built upon ruins. So somehow ruins, which seem to be the ashes of the past, are the cement of the future.
As night falls and shadows deepen the hollows, the Demeure de Chaos takes on the tragic grandeur of a world on the edge of an abyss.
I hope that after 18 years of struggle, This monumental artwork, made up of 5,400 artworks created from ruins, rust and ashes, will be recognized.
After they've stopped being used, buildings go through a purgatory, during which it is decided if they will survive or be completely effaced. It's often men by themselves or in small groups that manage to save them because they can see in these buildings the markings of an epoch.